Hey Bookaholics! Welcome back to another video. Today I am bringing you another specific book recommendations video. Today I'm going to be talking through some epic fantasy. I have done a couple of these where I've discussed kind of like the tone of a book before. I've gone through dark fantasy, I've gone through specific to Halloween-y kind of vibes depending on the type of reader you are. I've done cozy fantasy, I've done school settings, and now we're gonna get into some epic fantasy. Now I am trying to leave off of here any of the obvious ones. Lord of the Rings, Realm of the Elderlings. I've left off obviously A Song of Ice and Fire, etc. This is hopefully some, I think there's two on here that are very hyped, but there are hopefully a couple on here that maybe a little bit less so. I'm going to talk through the two that are like super hyped first so that we can get those over and done with, and then I'll go into some slightly more niche ones afterwards. But the first one I'm going to talk about is of course The Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. This is one where the sequel came out last year and was also very hyped. Well, actually it's a prequel, isn't it, that came out last year. This is a series of essentially standalones that are set in a world where we have dragons and we have different groups of people who revere these dragons differently. We have those who fear and loathe them and are in perpetual fear of the awakening of this specific dragon who is supposed to be very dangerous and bring about the end of days and all of that stuff. And then we have the ones who revere dragons and potentially see them as almost deities. There are also those who ride dragons. So it's different people's approaches to dragons, which is very interesting because in a way similar to our world where you have the dragons in China that are revered as deities, while in Europe, medieval times, we were out there trying to kill them all according to our folklore. So it's very interesting that this is what Samantha Shannon decided to do with the story. Talking about the epicness of the story, this story is a standalone, but it is a beast, and it is definitely one of those that in terms of its storytelling essence is very epic, which in standalones is rare. I do think that in a way is a bit of a detriment to this story because she's trying to pack so much in here. I ended up giving this story 4 stars. I would have liked for this to have been a new favorite because a standalone epic fantasy, right? But it was still a really good time, and it's definitely one that if you are wanting a genuine standalone, reads completely and utterly like epic fantasy, then you can't go wrong with this one. The other super hyped one, but that I think deserves some praise, is The Faithful and the Fallen by John Gwynne. This is epic beyond belief. This one takes everything that you could possibly love about classic adult fantasy, classic epic stories, and makes it its own. It brings it through to our century. It's taken the archetypes of characters and the world building and given it a level of darkness. It's given the characters a layer of faults, of humanity. It's given the world layers of corruption that aren't just divided into good and evil in the obvious ways, despite the fact that the narrative is built upon the fact that you have the bright star and the black sun, a force of good and evil. You have 2 prophesized beings who are going to bring about balance to the world. We have the bright star, a force for good, and the black sun, a force for evil. And yet, throughout the story, you have a plethora of different characters that are very much within the grey. Characters who will commit atrocities but for a greater good. You will have characters who will stand by and do nothing while evil is happening. You have discussions around good and evil on the backdrop of classic fantasy setup where it is good versus evil, but it discusses what that entire spectrum might look like. And that is what is so amazing about this series, is that if you are looking for epic fantasy of like the 80s and 90s, but you want it to suit today's standards of fantasy, you cannot go wrong with John Gwynne. I am super super up for reading the next series also in this world. And I just love the way that he discusses themes, the way he tackles characters. He will break your heart into a million pieces and then you will thank him for it. So absolutely incredible series and incredible author. One that has actually finally been getting some traction, thank you The Broken Binding, is the Hanged God trilogy by Tilda Holt. This one is a Norse mythology inspired epic fantasy. It is multi-POV. We get different characters from different parts of the world, from different backgrounds, different privileges, and it is incredible. This series is one of those that just tackles Norse mythology in a way I love it, because it felt raw, it felt intimate and epic at the same time. You felt like the gods very much still read like gods. They weren't just like petty people. They were these divine beings who could do whatever the hell they wanted with you. And we follow them during Ragnarok. Like, oh my god. And there's so much to this series. The way that the characters interact with each other, the way you will have one character do something and that repercussion be reflected in a different POV is absolutely astonishing. I just loved the way that this series was written. It's just something that has stayed with me, this series. Now, the characters are a little bit impersonal, so if you are a character-driven reader, it will take you a while to get into, because there is a certain level of formality to them, but please don't let that deter you. It's an incredible series, and if you are wanting something that is epic, saga level storytelling, you can't go wrong with this series. Next up, I have one that has such an interesting balance in the way it is both epic and intimate. We have the Poison Wars series by Sam Hawke. This is one I haven't heard as many people talking about, and I don't really know why. It's a duology. It's not like it's a huge commitment. This series is about a kingdom in which poisons tend to be the biggest kind of form of assassination. So we are following someone who is a poison tester to the king, and we are following it during a time of political turbulence because someone has been murdered despite all of the precautions that get put in place. We have a siege, we have death, we have reconstruction after a war. We have living in a palace, we have people from the upper classes reaching out among the lower populace, and overall there was just so much to this series that I really loved. We have espionage combined with battle-like confrontations throughout this entire series, and it is so epic for how dinky of a series it is, and it's definitely one of those that I don't think gets talked about enough, in my opinion. We are following it from mostly two perspectives, but we have all of these different characters from different cultures, from different backgrounds, different positions, coming in and out of the fray throughout the story, all while we are following people who are incredibly close to power while not being in power, and the influences that they do and don't have on what is going on in the world. It's just an incredible series to really experience a fantasy across different levels of privilege, power, and culture, all within a little bite-sized piece. As I said, it's only a duology. So if you are looking to get into some epic fantasy, but you're a little bit intimidated by the 10 to 15 book series that are out there, you can't go wrong with this one. And the last one that I have is from one of my favorite authors, but is one of their less appreciated works in my opinion, and that is the Inheritance series by N.K. Jemisin. This is a series of somewhat standalones, but not really. They are all following different characters, but you do need to read them in order because the chronology does matter, and what happens in one does affect the next, and you will lack understanding, but you are following different sets of characters. We are following a world in which we have gods, and these gods feel like gods. Do not doubt that they are gods, but they have been imprisoned by these people and forced to serve. And therefore we have these people who are almost more powerful than the gods themselves because they are the ones wielding the power of these gods. And it's a very interesting dynamic and dichotomy. We have like a family feuds slash like a trial to be the next heir thing going on. And for the most part, it's just a series that is absolutely fascinating in the way it unfolds. This is N.K. Jemisin's debut novel. I loved watching how the beginnings, the buds, the initial few flowers of her incredible brain and writing style are already so prevalent in this very first novel. It's so well crafted, it's so well executed, in my opinion. Yane, the protagonist, does take some warming to. She doesn't instantly draw you in. So if you are a character driven reader, you may struggle at the beginning, but I promise you it is worthwhile pushing through. But for the most part, this is a series that just felt divine for a reason. Like, you have gods amongst these people, and therefore the epicness cannot be overlooked. The scope of it, the almost world-ending level stakes that you have throughout this, all while simultaneously it feeling quite secluded and isolated at times when you are in this palace. And just the combination of the two, I thought, was absolutely masterful. But there you have it. Those are 5 series that I would recommend if you are looking for some epic fantasy. And I mean epic with a capital E. But that is all from me for today. So let me know, what are some of your favourite absolutely epic fantasies that you have read? Yes, I know Malazan exists. Yes, I know A Song of Ice and Fire exists. Yes, I know Realm of the Eldlings exists. But I am super excited to know if there are any others that you would recommend, or if you would consider picking up any of these series based on my thoughts. But that is all from me for today. Bye!